Oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm getting better at it.
At 21 years old, which makes him very young for this type of tortoise. They can live over 100 years. The record is something like 194. So incredibly long period of time for these guys. And it's something that I like to talk about. If you're thinking about getting a reptile for a pet, a lot of times people will get turtles or tortoises and they won't do the research to find out how long the animal lives. You want to know how long your pet lives. And if it's going to live 60 plus years and you get it when you're in your 20s, there's a high likelihood that your pet will outlive you. And that's not generally the best choice. So definitely with any pet, you want to make sure to do a lot of research to know what you're getting into. These guys are a lot more work than you would expect them to be. They have really, really specific diet requirements that aren't often easy for people to replicate. And they also need really specific temperatures and humidity. Not necessarily the easiest first time pet, that's for sure. Yeah, what's your question? So that's an interesting question, and my answer to that is that this animal is priceless. He is a really amazing example of his species, and it's an endangered species. So it's not something that people should ever be taking as a pet or taking out of the wild. Now in this case, he came to us because he was bred at another facility, and his genetics are really well represented. So he already has lots of other brothers and sisters out there in other zoos. So he doesn't necessarily need to be part of what's called our species survival plan. And what that is, it's sort of like Match.com for wild animals. What we want to do with an endangered species is we want to make sure that you have really good genetics available throughout zoos. So it's not enough just to have a boy animal and a girl animal and go, well, we've got two of them, we're just going to put them together. You want to make sure to make the very best match possible. And that has a lot to do with not just genetics, but also their ages. For tortoises, in particular, they wait to have babies until they're a certain size. So you may think, oh, these have a great genetic match, but they're not big enough yet. There's a lot of things that go into making sure that you do a good job for things like that. So he is part of our SSP. Yeah.
Well, there is a few ways to make it live longer. Well, there can be one way for it to have babies at a young age. One, you would have to make it at least a hybrid.
Well, but that wouldn't really serve a good purpose for an animal that we want to save the particular species. So when you hybridize an animal, already now it's not that pure species, and we want to save this particular species of tortoise. So we wouldn't want to breed it with another tortoise because it would sort of defeat the point. It's an interesting point you bring up, though. A good boy, huh? Yeah, what's your question?
Why does it keep on turning around?
He just feels like walking around. It's whatever he feels like doing, so if he wants to come this way, he can. Where are you going? He can move pretty quickly. He's a very food-motivated tortoise, which is awesome because it makes him very easy to train for our shows. So a lot of times people are very surprised to find out that you can train a tortoise. But anything that likes to eat and has a nervous system can be trained. And that means that people have easily trained fish, like little fish that you have in your aquarium at home. You can absolutely train them. People have trained hermit crabs. People have trained clams. If it's got a nervous system and it likes to eat, you can train it. You just have to figure out what motivates it and what it does like to eat. So all of our animals here at the zoo are trained through something called positive reinforcement training, which means that we want to make it a really fun time for that animal. So we pair a sound, like a clicker. If you guys have heard of clicker training, like dogs or cats, and we pair that sound with food. And then the animal learns to expect that every time it hears a click, it's gonna get a treat. And once that animal understands what that means, then you can train it to do just about anything that it's capable of doing. And it worked for him. So he's part of our show sometimes. So when you guys saw the part with the armadillo, sometimes it's a tortoise that's in that part of the show. Yeah.
How many eggs?
That's a good question. So it's somewhere around like 18 to 24 in one clutch of eggs. But none for him. He's a dude. It's not gonna happen.
I think he likes it.
He's a pretty cool guy. He's sort of dog-like, is the best way that I can explain him. He has a real personality, which is really cool. I used to be like, about tortoises and turtles in general, and then I met him. Totally changed my opinion about these animals. They're so much fun to be around, and he's a really smart guy. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go set him back and start playing at the show. But thank you guys so much for coming out today.
Animals that can come out?
Well, you guys, if you keep walking around the zoo, we do close encounters all of the time. And so if you look in our close encounter areas, you're likely to see more animals from back behind the scenes. Thanks, guys.
Let's roll. Wait, is there gonna be another?
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the Adult Kit channel on YouTube.